Hi, it's Rachel Maldonado.
And I'm Michael Yon, and that's Los Angeles behind me.
Oh, wow. Well, I am in the Chicago area, and we are talking about the masculinity crisis. Michael, is there a crisis?
Yeah, in a lot of countries. In fact, I was just over in Japan with Masako Ganaha, the famous and incredible Japanese journalist, and Chuck Holton, real incredible war correspondent, not just war correspondent, he does unbelievable amounts of work across the world. And Chuck and Masako wanted to interview someone who married a plastic doll in Japan, a man, right? Because these men are just playing, video games and stuff and watching anime and all this stuff. And so we go up to his tiny apartment, which is like the size of like a submarine thing for a lieutenant. It's a real tiny, right? And I don't know how big the submarine bays are for lieutenants, but I mean it's really tiny. And but it was at least private. He had enough food in there for maybe one day maximum. I looked at, he had enough toilet paper for like 6 years. I don't know. I mean, he wasn't thinking it through. Like, okay, you don't have any food here, but you've got a lot of toilet paper. Anyway, he didn't do the calculations. I guess he didn't study math. But anyway, but the bottom line is he married an anime character, a plastic doll, right? And when I asked him what's the name of your quote unquote wife, he got offended actually. He was like, um, he was offended, like you don't know her name. It was like not knowing Elvis or something. And like as if I sit around and watch anime and he's like, let me play you some of her music. Is this just a plastic doll? He married a plastic doll. I mean, I published it, right? And actually, I felt pity for him. I didn't feel any disgust or anything like that. But in the same with Chuck, when we walked out, when we were finished with the interview, Chuck was like, I feel pity for him. And Chuck said the same thing I was actually thinking and feeling. He goes, I don't feel any disgust for him. That's exactly what I was thinking. He goes, I feel pity. And Chuck, he's a man's man. He's always off in war. He was an Army Ranger, parachuted into Panama, and then he bought a house there. I was like, that's some kind of guy. You parachuted into Panama and shot the place up and then came back and bought a house. So, and I mean, he loves Panamanians and speaks Spanish. But I mean, but the point is, there's a lot of men in Japan. It's not just the United States. It's also across Europe where I spend a lot of time. I spent more than 6 years in Europe, and I've been there quite a lot recently because of Europe is collapsing, and part of this is obviously a manhood issue, and the same with the United States. I'm all over the United States all the time. There's only one state I haven't been to, and that's Alaska. And I'm threatening to go to this airport and go to Alaska just to see it for a month so I can. It's the one state that I desperately want to go to and I haven't been to. Can you believe it? And so, but the bottom line, you could probably find some real men up in Alaska. But let me go back to Japan. So we interviewed this guy that had married a plastic doll, very effete. He's just working on his games all the time, and he's got his doll that he married, and he wrote a book about her, and he said actually many women are marrying plastic dolls, and not many, it's not like millions or something, but enough that it's people are noticing that more women marry plastic dolls than men. So I mean it's just this fantasy world, right? And likewise, yesterday at this hotel that I'm in here in Los Angeles, I've been on the border. I've been out there night and day all across from Panama deep in the Darien Gap to Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, and now I'm at the airport getting ready to punch out back to Texas. It looks like to hit the border again, and what I'm getting to is you see our borders are open in part because of this manhood issue, right? I mean, because people just aren't standing up. But here in this hotel that I'm at, I go downstairs yesterday and there's a huge gaming convention. So you got all these guys sitting around just playing games, board games. I mean, a lot of people, hundreds of people. I'm like, they don't realize they are literally behind the lines on an invasion. And yeah, I asked somebody, yes, actually, let me go back to I wish I could take a note here, but I left my pen somewhere because I want to tell you several things I don't want to forget. But so over in Japan, after we interviewed Doll Boy, we then interviewed, in Japan, they call them bearded boys. These men who are like, older men and they've got beards and whatnot, but they act like children, right? It's like never grow up, right? And so we went down to Ishigaki Island and we interviewed a fisherman who's standing up against Senkaku Island takeover from Japan. I mean, from CCP. Also, Taiwan also has claims on Senkaku, but that's not important to talk about the political side. What's important is that fisherman, he was a stud. He was a real man. He's like in his 70s, and he's like his hands are like Popeye, man. So when Chuck and I and Masako were interviewing him, we really liked him. We enjoyed spending, quite a bit of time with him, several hours out on his boat, and then back in his sort of office, you might call it, I guess. And he's just like a real man. He reminds you of like your grandfather, that sort of thing, like stud. And he's like, yeah, let's do this, let's do that, he still does martial arts and things like that. He's actually swam from his boat to Senkaku because it's illegal to land there with their boat. I don't know if people don't know what Senkaku Islands is. It's a highly contested area, right? With CCP out there. I mean, you can get into like real gunfights or something getting out there. But he's defending Japan on his own, right? He's just a stud. So we interviewed him. Then we interviewed Doll Boy as well, and then we also went to northern Japan. And this time I just went with Masako. Chuck had to go some other country. And we went up and we're studying famine issues and not the manhood crisis per se, but famine issues. So we got to this place in northern Japan, not Hokkaido, but I'm sorry, the name of the town. And we're going to, most of the farmers now are like in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, right? Because the young people don't want to farm as much. So it's a problem for Japan. Like there's huge amounts of Japan that are just empty. And so there's huge amounts of bears and deer and hogs and monkeys and stuff. So it's like wild kingdom, right? I mean, a lot of bears. Like one guy got killed by a bear just at least 2 weeks ago. Another guy got killed. Those bears are killing a lot of people. There's two different kinds of bears. Hokkaido's got these brown bears, and then I'm going somewhere with this. And then there's another sort of bear called Asian black bears that are in on not, or they're like the mainland Japan, let's say, and these bears, both types are quite aggressive, like very serious bears. These aren't like petting zoo bears, you know what I mean? These are like, these will eat you alive type bears. So this one guy, we go to this town and we want to study food issues and farming. And we go into this town and I said, let's find a hunter. And because in every country I go to, Rachel, I think I told you this before, but I love to go to hunters. I'm not hunters. I love to go to farmers and hunters. And hunters and farmers often are kind of overlap, right? And so we go into this town, a small town in sort of northern Japan, and we go in. And I said, hey, I'm looking for a hunter or farmer, but I would like a hunter farmer, and I'd like to talk with a bear hunter. And Masako, she's Japanese. She's like, bear hunter? What a strange question. I'm like, come on, Masako. If I'm asking a question, it's probably going somewhere. And she just thought we couldn't find a bear hunter. I was like, we can find a bear hunter. These bears are killing people around here. So we found a bear hunter on the same day. So we're in his house, big farmhouse. He's 73, I think, or 74. And he's a stud. And he's with his wife. She's super happy. And he's a rice farmer and stuff. And he's like, you want to see my bear? I'm like, bear? You got a bear? And he's like, yeah. He's speaking Japanese, of course. Masako is translating. So we go out there and he's got a little bear in a cage. I'm like, how'd you get a bear? And he goes, oh, I found it in the woods because, it didn't have a mother. I was like, oh, anyway, he goes, you want to see my eagle? Oh, you got an eagle too? So look at this eagle. Yeah, he's like, you found the eagle too. I was like, okay, everybody's got a bear and an eagle. It's like, and so we start talking and I said, do you ever let the bear in the house? And he's like, oh, no, I can't do that. It'll, it's a bear, I was like, well, anyway, well, I was like, it looks friendly. And I mean, he's like, no, these are like, and so, but he could pet the bear. He was petting it through the thing, and I felt bad for the bear actually. But anyway, that's a separate story. I'll hunt bears, but I don't like them in cages for some reason. I've actually never hunted a bear. I've hunted other stuff, but anyway, he was the same way too. He's like, well, it didn't have its mother. But anyway, we're talking about bear hunting, And this guy, again, 73, 74, super stud, like the fishermen down in Senkaku and Ishigaki Island. These are actually the men that I was used to seeing like in special forces and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, let's go. You know what I mean? We don't have time. You know what I mean? And the sun's, you know, so we're talking about bear hunting. I said, when did you first bear hunt? This is in Japan. He goes, the first time I bear hunted, I was 4 years old. I was on my grandfather's back. And he said, I'm a fourth generation bear hunter, like my, great great grandfather or whatever was a bear hunter. And then, and he said, I've been hunting forever. And I said, how do you hunt them? And do you ambush or do you, wait in a tree stand or something like that? And he goes, no, I track them and I ambush them. So what he does is when the conditions are right, he just knows when to hunt. He said, I don't schedule a hunt for like Saturday or something. I hunt when the conditions are right. Like, when I feel, everything's right, the clouds and the snow, a little bit of snow. He likes a little bit of snow on the ground so he can pick up their track better. And he'll go to different places and he says, okay, he'll find the direction of travel from the tracks, of course. And then he looks at the terrain because he said he hunts a lot of different places, and he'll just guess which way the bear is actually going to be in a few hours, right? And so because he knows when the bears get up and move, so if he hunts right after the snow fell, then it's erased everything. It's fresh tracks, right? And so he gets ahead. He said he rushes ahead. He's a fit guy. He's in his 70s, but he's like, he's got 6 different weapons. He's got 5 rifles and a shotgun, and he's like, this is Japan. So he said he rushes ahead and he gets behind a tree. And he said he just waits behind the tree. And he said he'll wait there for like an hour, 2 hours. He's just like waiting, looking around the corner, around the corner of the tree, waiting. And he said when the bear gets really close, because he knows basically he knows their behavior. And the way I know alligators, like I can hunt gators sort of like this, not behind a tree, but I just know their behavior. I know when it's good to go get a gator. Like I don't go gator hunting because I want to go gator hunting. I go gator hunting when everything's calm and I can see them really well, and everything. You know what I mean? I mean when I was a kid, not now because I'm in Los Angeles, and so and that's so pathetic. I couldn't even believe growing up. And so anyway, he's like, I wait till they get almost right on me, and then I flip it off safety, and I go around the corner, and the bear doesn't jump at you. He said the bear always goes down, and then it goes back a step or two, and then it gets up on its hind legs to defend. He said then he shoots it in the chest, right? So he said he usually shoots it from 1 to 2 meters, right? And so he just flat blasts it, right? And so and I said, wow. I said, what's the closest you ever shot one? He's like, I don't know, 3 centimeters, 6 centimeters. I was like, you like hit it with the rifle almost, right? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, because that's the way he does it. He ambushes them, right? But what I'm getting to is I said, wow, you ever heard of a GoPro? He's like, of course I've heard of a GoPro. he goes, I said, you should get a GoPro camera of you shooting a bear from 1 to 2 meters in the chest from around a tree. He goes, that's a good idea. And I said, so he goes, you want to see my bear? He has sort of like, how in America we talk about a bear cave, a man cave. He goes, let me show you. It was like his bear cave. He goes, by the way, he goes, I don't go hunting to go hunting. I don't go hunting to hunt bear. He goes, I go to get a bear. He goes, most people go hunting because they want to go hunting. I go to get a bear. He also hunts hogs and deer, right? He had a wall of photos and stuff. He showed me 4 big freezers of bear meat, deer meat, and hog meat, right? So we go up to this like part of his farmhouse, and he said, when I get a bear, or he said he gets more bears than anybody in that part of Japan because that's all he does. He doesn't go hunting. He goes to get a bear, right? And so I'm sitting on a bear rug on the floor, with the bear head hanging out, and there's bears. He's got a stack of bear skulls. Not one of them shot in the head because he shoots them all in the chest from almost right there. He's giving them flash burns as he shoots them, right? And he's just like, showing me all this stuff. He's like, here, my son's the champion shooter for, I think he said it was definitely Japan, but it was more than that actually. And he's like, showing me all this a whole stack of skulls, of bear skulls from his whole life. And him and his wife were just as happy. I know people watching this like, oh no, he hunts bears. It's like, see, you have a manhood problem, right? I'm a hunter. I grew up hunting bears. All people are like, oh no, I'm gonna cry for the bear. I'm gonna eat the bear. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's the toxic masculinity. I got it. I'm completely toxic. I'll go hunt a bear. I'll eat it. I'll eat it. You know what I mean? It's like, and I've never actually hunted bear. One of my old Green Beret teammates, I go in his house and he's got bears that he's hunted, and we were eating one actually when I. But I mean, but the point is, if you want these borders closed and that sort of thing, you're not. I'm in a hotel that's filled with gamers that are playing board games downstairs. Do they even know what's going on? I often ask people about the border, right? They don't have any sense of insecurity or what a real man will do to you. You know what I mean? Or much less a million men, right? Much less 5 million men that come across the border. And you don't you're not even ready. You're playing board games. You're smoking dope and running around, drinking alcohol. I see all these dopes. I get on the elevator here at the hotel and it smells like marijuana. You're like, what's wrong with you against marijuana? Yeah, you know what? Because they're gonna punk you out. And we're supposed to be on the same team, and you're out there smoking dope, right? These guys coming through the Darien Gap in Panama, they're studs. They will kill you, right? And I mean straight up kill you and take your stuff and take your women. That's the real world we still live in, despite these fantasy games, right? When I ask people frequently, how many people you think are crossing that border every month? I asked a waiter yesterday. He seemed like a smart guy. He said he's from New York and he's working here. I said, just out of curiosity, how many people do you think are coming across our border every month? And he said, driving across? I mean, just like crossing, like illegal aliens are coming in. And he thought about it. He goes, oh, maybe 200 cars a month. He said, cars or walking? I said, either way, cars or walking. He said, about 200 cars a month, probably, And I said, how many do you think walk across? He's like, people walk across? I was like, yeah, there's, the country is being filled up with people right now. And he thought maybe 200 a month. Let me give you a clue. It's probably 200 every 10 minutes. You know what I mean? It's about at least 300,000 a month, not a year, at least 300,000 a month. That's a highly defensible number, right? And I'm talking gotaways and caught by Border Patrol, sent back across Mexico to fill out their paperwork and come back in. It's at least 300,000 per month at the current rate. And that rate is clearly increasing no matter what Border Patrol tells you. As you know, Rachel, as we were about to go on, I was getting a message from a congressman right here that wants me to take them to Texas. And so, I mean, on the border, I mean, it's literally coming in right now. They're working on this early in the morning as well. And so I just talked with about 10 congressmen maybe 10 days ago, actually, on this border issue. People don't even realize they have no sense of preservation. They're just not men. They're like the Japanese call bearded boys. They don't even realize that our border is wide open, or they don't respond to it like that fisherman in Japan does on Senkaku. He's like single-handedly standing up for Japan at Senkaku Island, right? Or the farmer talking about in Japan that was the bear hunter talking about the children now are down playing anime, whatever you do with anime, marry the anime character, I guess, down in, the big cities, Osaka and in Yokohama and Tokyo and all that stuff. They don't have, when you go into these people's small apartments in places like Tokyo, they're just like little prison cells. They don't have enough food for this guy that married the plastic doll, maybe a day. He's skinny. He doesn't have any fat on him. He's not, if the electricity and everything goes out, he's got plenty of toilet paper. Not that he'll need it because he won't be eating, right? He won't be eating past 1 or 2 meals, and that's it. He won't have water. He has no survival skills. He's a child in a man's body. He works in a school. He's not a teacher. He's like but on the one side, I feel pity for him. Like Chuck Holton said that he felt pity for him. On another side, I'm like, this is the guy I'm supposed to fight beside? I mean, he's a child. You know what I mean? He's a child in a man's body. He doesn't have any testosterone. He's not like an infantryman that I love to go out with, or a SEAL or something like that. He's just a child, you know. And there's millions and millions of these boy childs. And if I say, why are you smoking dope all the time? Why, when you walk past me, do I get this whiff of marijuana? You know what I mean? They get upset. Oh, what are you against marijuana? And then they'll start going off with, well, alcohol does it too, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, and guess what? You shouldn't be drunk all the time either. Don't be, that's chemical. Japan just started a program. The government of Japan started a program advertising to drink more whiskey. You can't even make up this stuff. When your government is saying drink more whiskey, what do you think's going on here? You have any survival skills or instincts? Like, maybe we should guard Senkaku Island. Maybe it's okay to hunt a bear and shoot it in the chest. It is, right? You don't like it? I don't care. Because these guys coming across the border right here, guess what? They're going to kill you. And I mean, take your stuff. This is a weaponized migration. This isn't people just looking for jobs. I mean, there are huge amounts of people coming in that are quite predatory, and they're open about it. Did you see the interview that, who put this up recently? I was with him when he made the video down in El Paso. I was with Chuck Holton and Anthony Rubin, and also Antonio Aguero, and some others. And this Venezuelan guy's like, screw Americans. We're coming to teach you a lesson and things like that. A Venezuelan guy, stubby guy, and also a criminal type guy. You know what I mean? He was acting that way. Millions of guys like this are coming through. Now I got it. Everybody will go, are you saying that they're all like that? No. And don't be a child and talk like that either. I get this constantly, every single day, right? And what I'm getting to is, people aren't used to being men or talking like men. They're not used to saying, I'm not going to put up with your crap, right? I don't care if it hurts your feelings. I don't care whatsoever. My feelings have been hurt a lot of times. And guess what? A man gets over it, right? Men have feelings just like everybody else, right? And unfortunately, they don't have enough feelings of aggression. And remember, aggression and anger are not the same things, right? Aggression
Wow.
and anger are totally separate, right? People get those confused. Aggression, I am highly aggressive, but I'm not an angry type person at all. Anger is completely different. Anger is an emotion. Aggression is an action, right? And they're not always related even at all. Like, I do aggressive acts, like going over to Japan and talking with the Japanese man who goes to Senkaku, right? Fisherman. That's aggression. He wants to keep CCP back. He didn't show any signs of anger. He wasn't angry. He wants to defend his country. It's a complete difference, right? And one thing that's very important for people to keep in mind, when I was on Jordan Peterson recently, and we talked about this. Jordan, I'll take a slight disagreement with Jordan on one thing. He's brilliant. I watch a lot of his programs. I've been on a show a couple times, and we're going to get together maybe again next month or something, next month or two. And we talked about hatred. What creates hatred, right? Well, he thinks it's disgust. I tend to disagree, but I think you have to, like H2O, hydrogen and oxygen in the right proportion makes water, right? If you combine it properly, right? And like with heat. And what makes hatred? I believe it's disgust plus anger, right? You have to have disgust and anger. And Jordan thinks it's disgust. And I said, no, I think you have to have anger, because you're often disgusted with something that you're not actually angry at, right? You know what I mean? And so if your child does something, disgusting, like, painting pictures on the wall or something, you know what I mean? You might be not poop on the wall. You know what I mean? You're disgusted, but I mean, it's your child. You're not going to be hate your child, and you're not going to be angry because it's a little child, it's like, you know what I mean? So you're not going to, or you might get angry because somebody does something, but you're not really disgusted with them. You know what I mean? You have to combine those things, right? And then once those are combined, then you have hatred. And what I'm getting to is, like, when I go to museums constantly, I just went to a museum the other day studying. I left the border and I took Anthony Rubin to a Holocaust museum so that we can discuss information war and things like that, because this is a big component of this. Anthony Ray Rubin is from muckraker.com, by the way. So we've been out all over the borders together, including the Darien Gap. See, he's a young man. I take some of these young journalists out, real ones, right? Like independents, like Misako Ganaha. She's a woman, obviously, but taking the ones out who have aggression, not anger, aggression. Like I haven't seen any anger from Misako or Anthony, actually, but both of them have a lot of aggression. Like, we'll go, let's go right now. Like, what are we waiting for? You know what I mean? And that's aggression, again, not anger, right? And so, but when you're creating hatred, right, to create a war situation, you want to create hatred and disgust and combine those. Like when I went to the Nanjing Museum in China, in Nanjing, China, I spent about a year running around China. In fact, I spent most of my life out of the United States. I spent more than half of my life in about 90 countries, right? Third world countries all over the place. So that's another reason I'm concerned about millions of people per year coming into the United States. We don't even know who they are. Young men who, in many cases, it's mostly young men who are, in many cases, already inculcated with American men are easy to knock over. And I go in this hotel and I'm looking at all these American men playing games. Or I look at the American men all over the place and women who have no real idea what's happening at the border. And if you say anything about it, they'll say xenophobe, and I'll say information war. You know what I mean? You're just saying something that's been put into your head, you know, and you just pop out with it. It's a supplied answer, right? And so the aggression to go do something about the border. I'm in Los Angeles. The border's right. We're behind enemy lines right now. They're coming in through this airport, right? The United States government, quote unquote, is invading the United States, right? But almost nobody seems to know that. They're not exhibiting the aggression. They're not exhibiting, and it's not just men that have aggression. A lot of women do too, but the men generally will have more aggression. We all know that, right? Now, I know there's people out there going, oh, you're a sexist. I'm like, shut up. I don't have time for you, man. You're all confused. You're probably off getting a sex change. You know what I'm saying? I'm seriously, my years running around with special operations type people in wars or being in special operations myself, at some point, you just don't have time for the childishness. You don't care. We're in a state of war. And let me tell you what, the most dangerous thing in a war is not a courageous enemy. It's a cowardly ally. It's a coward in your camp is the most dangerous thing. Someone who does not possess the aggression to say, hey, they just killed two of our guys. I want to go get them. You know what I mean? As opposed to, hey, they just killed two of our guys. I'm afraid. What are we going to do? Oh, no, they might kill more of us. No, a real stud is like, hey, just killed two of our guys. All right. We're going to get them. You know what I'm saying? And we're not going to waste time doing it. You know what I'm saying? That's what men do. That's what men do. They defend their women, right? Oh, people get confused. Men and women, yeah, sexist, what is this toxicity crap? I don't even have time for it, right? I mean, seriously, let me tell you a story. A good friend of mine, actually, in Los Angeles, we worked for years together. One of her, we were talking about Second Amendment, right? This was maybe 10 years ago. We're in Los Angeles. I'm visiting. And we're talking about Second Amendment and how people are trying to destroy our rights to defend ourselves because, they're worthless. Bottom line, let's just get to the point, and I have no use for a woman who can't shoot a gun. I've said that around groups of tables. It'll be like I'm often at long tables with people, and I'm often the only one there that's an American. That's very frequent. If it's Germans and English, it's completely anti-gun, right? If it's a lot of Americans, it'll be anti-gun. I'll be the only one with 10 people at the table going, so how are you going to defend that woman beside you, your girlfriend or your wife? You're not. And because you're like surrendering your gun. And biologically, she doesn't really want you. She might take you because you're the nearest thing she's got. But what she wants is a man. Biologically, she wants a stud, right? Who can defend her and baby bear, right? That's what deep down inside she wants, right? That's beyond wanting. That's core, right? Let me tell you this story. Let me finish with it. And not that you interrupted you. I interrupted myself. And so my friend told me this story, a good friend of mine, about her actual good friend. We were talking about Second Amendment. And this very liberal friend of hers, of course, it lived in Hollywood, quite wealthy. And anti-gun. That's why the subject came up. I said, how are you going to defend yourself in California? And she's like, oh, you can have guns and that sort of thing. Because, but she goes, oh, my friend just got a divorce. And I said, why? Or, I mean, that's kind of thing. She brought up, and she goes, and she told me the story. Anti-gun, no means to defend themselves. Several black guys, people say, oh, you can't say black guy. I just said it, right? So several black guys broke into their house, and the husband had no means of defense. He's one of those lady boys. You know what I mean? He's just like a child. And he told his wife, because the black men started taunting him and his wife, and they raped her right in front of him on their bed. And the husband was encouraging her just to put up with it, and it'll be over and they'll be left in peace, right? So he sat there while they're taunting him and taunting her, raped her in their bed, and he never defended at all. And they got a divorce, right? I mean, and I asked my friend, I said, well, why did she marry him? She's like, well, he was quite wealthy and they got along and they're both liberal, and he's raped now by multiple men, and he told her just to sit there and take it, and he lay there and take it, and he never defended her at all, never physically defended her, and he didn't have the means to. He didn't have a weapon, right? Because I'll call 911. Right? Okay, your wife just got raped, and maybe she got even AIDS or something. I have no idea, but I mean, you can't make up this stuff. He's worthless. He's trash. I've got no use for him. You know what I mean? And so we're going into a state of war, and most American men or women don't even realize it. So who am I supposed to side with? Who am I supposed to side with? All these children? Because I can't do it alone. Am I supposed to side with these children downstairs? And, they're like 40, 50 years old, 60 years old, man bun hair and all this, and playing their freaking little board game. You know what I'm saying? Where's your skateboards? You know what I'm saying? Seriously, you're playing board games. We're being invaded. Yeah. I mean, who am I supposed to side with? I can't do it alone. None of the men who will stand up for our border can do it alone. Am I supposed to side with you? You're worthless. I already know from my years in wars that the worst thing is to have cowards in your own camp. You can't have that. A coward in your camp is your greatest enemy. Look at what's the lady boy's name that went to prison for stealing the WikiLeaks. What's his name? Changed his gender change. What's his name? What was, who I'm talking about? The Lady Gaga boy. What's his name? You remember? Anyway, he stole a bunch of secret documents, WikiLeaks, right? I mean, again, he had gender issues, and he openly, he was so concerned about, gender stuff. That's all he worried about. That one day he went into the work when he was in the Army, and Bradley Manning, right? You're supposed to call him something else, like Lady Boy Manning or something. I don't know. It doesn't matter. He was born a man, right? He was born a male, right? And so he goes in and he stole a bunch of secret documents, WikiLeaks, right? And he said that when he did it, he went in there with CDs that had Lady Gaga on them, right? He was listening to Lady Gaga, born this way. Okay, whatever. I get it. And I do believe people are born that way. I remember since childhood, a friend of mine that I grew up with, and he was clearly gay, and he was a good kid. He actually did end up dying of AIDS, but he was clearly gay. I could see that since we were little kids. I liked him. His name was David Earp, and he's dead now, right? And but I mean, he really was born that way. You know what I mean? We had the same black lady that raised both of us for a while, named Viola, and she told me one day, little David came through wearing his mama's high heels. You know what I mean? He's like, coming through, walking down that hallway wearing those high heels. He was always like that. And I'm like, I get it. It's true. But at the same time, he's not going to be able to defend us against the wolf or the bear or whatever, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, or millions of people in a weaponized migration who are not necessarily coming here just for a better life. But even if they are coming for a better life, our economy is collapsing, right? The European economy is collapsing. Chinese economy is collapsing. We have food issues. You don't see them yet, but I'm telling you, this is what I study. This is all I study around the world. I'm constantly looking at food and energy issues. I'm looking at migration issues, weaponized migration. That's why I was so far ahead warning about the Ukraine-Russia thing, because I was over in Africa with Chuck Holton, and we were looking at weaponized migration issues our ally Morocco was using weaponized migration against Spain and the EU for various reasons. And then we saw that Belarus was doing something similar with Lithuania, and we flew up to Lithuania, Vilnius from Africa. And actually, the Lithuanian army, senior army officer, saw that I was in Africa doing migration issues, and contacted him because I was with them in Afghanistan, right? I was with the Lithuanian and U.S. armies and British armies and Afghan armies in Afghanistan for 2 years, right? And they said the Lithuanians were about to invite me up there to show us their border problems. And so anyway, I flew up there and they gave me complete access to the camp for about 5 weeks, complete access to the border, like the sort of access that people dream about. But I was with them in Afghanistan, so they gave me access. And I started warning, like, something's up. Belarus, Russia, probably going to do something. If you listen to my old, I was on John Batchelor yesterday, and I go on a show sometimes. John told me a few weeks ago, he said, John Batchelor is a famous radio host, right? And John said he was reviewing our old interviews where I was talking about Lithuania long before the war with Russia, and he said it's turned out to be amazingly prescient in what's happening. I was like, you know what? Sometimes I may sound like a genius, but I'm not. I'm just physically going there and looking, right? Like, I'm telling you that the border in the United States is going to explode with a lot more people than the at least 300,000 per month who are coming through right now. Let me say it again. At least 300,000 per month are coming through right now. That's, a combination of flying in, like behind me at LAX, New York, whatever, driving across, gotaways on the border, and coming in many other ways, student visas that they never return, and that sort of thing. Anyway, bottom line is, yeah, I mean, we've got some issues, and when I go down to Panama, Colombia, and Mexico, I spend a lot of time in Mexico, Colombia, Panama, that sort of thing, watching the inputs, right? And I can tell you right now, when you see Mayorkas and others saying, "Oh, the statistics are going down, fewer people are," bullshit, absolute bullshit. I'm telling you, the numbers are increasing. What's the numbers that are decreasing? They're playing cat and mouse. They're playing games with the statistics, right? They're saying they'll put in these words illegal crossings, right? Well, it's because they're making them legal, right? But the bottom line is that they're making the crossings legal, and then they'll say, illegal crossings have diminished, and the numbers in our camps are diminishing. There's only like 10,000 a day now, literally. They're like reporting 10,000 a day. You know what I mean? And they're like, "Oh, the number's going down." And people are like, "Hey, the number's going down." Even if that number were true, which it's not, but even if that number were true, it would be more. We only had 160,000 troops in Iraq at the peak. At the peak, it was like 158,000 at the peak of the war. That's how many troops we had, right? Think about that. We took over a whole country with like 158,000 troops. Most of those are not combat troops. And of course, we had a lot of support contractors and that. So there was more to it than just, 158,000 troops. But the bottom line is we've got that many coming in at least every 2 weeks, right? And huge amounts are military age males, right? And don't underestimate this. Weaponized migration has a long history. I saw it in Tibet when I was in Tibet. I saw it in Hong Kong when Hong Kong got taken over. I was there for 7 months until the police took me to the airplane and closed the door. If you look up my name in Hong Kong and police, you'll see the police taking me to the airport and making me leave Hong Kong after 7 months. But what I'm getting to is the Chinese did weaponize migration against Hong Kong, and they've done it in Tibet. They're doing it with the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. This is the old Stalin did it with Ukraine back in the 30s and actually before. And Mao did it, of course, within China. Weaponized migration has a long history, right? We can talk about examples all day long. And Hitler did it. Highly weaponized migration, if you want to put it that way. And because he was getting Lebensraum, right, living room, right, like taking Poland and whatnot. And so what I'm getting to is this is a real invasion, and it's not. These people are not here for jobs. You got these people putting their head in the sand, smoking their dope. I have a right to smoke dope. What about you? What about alcohol? It's like, yeah, alcohol too, right? You got it. If you're out there drunk all the time and doing drugs and smoking dope all the time, this ain't the dope people smoked in the 80s, by the way, right? This is chemical warfare. You see Joe Rogan doing a show, drinking whiskey, smoking dope with Elon Musk. You know what I mean? Not, I doubt Elon actually does that much, because he's too smart, because it does dumb you down, right? This is a fact of life, right? And it's chemical warfare, like giving the fire water to the Native Americans, right? Like the opium wars, Chinese pumping the opium into Chinese, right? And this is an old form of warfare. Get everybody to do drugs. Again, Japan now, the government of Japan actually advertising that people should drink Japanese whiskey, right? Who do you think's behind these information war games, right? This is actual information war. I go down the streets in Los Angeles or Oregon or Washington State. You go into the hotels, smells like dope. Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Atlanta, the same thing. The whole hotel smell like dope. I'm like, these guys are going to get killed. And they might have big muscles and whatnot, but they're asleep. And these guys coming across the border will slit their throats and take their women. And guess what? Their women will run off with these invaders, because that's what happens. When we took Japan, America went back with a lot of Japanese wives, right? When we took Germany, America went back with a lot of German wives. The invader will come in and kill you and take your women, and your women will run off with them, because biologically, hey, he's the conqueror. I need to make baby bears now. You know what I mean? And and anyway, yeah, there's a crisis. There's a crisis, and these guys coming across the border are the new testosterone in town. And what is the biological woman going to react to? Right? They're not going to react to, boy, I can't wait to marry me a gaming man, a champion gamer, whatever these games are. I don't even know, again, like I'm telling you, you press play on me, Rachel. I'll go for hours on some of this stuff. And it's quite serious, because I'm looking at these guys. These are the guys I'm supposed to be defending the United States side by side with. And they're just guys. I won't even call them men, right? They're not. They're just like little things walking around in male bodies.
Well, there is a masculinity crisis. And you referenced Jordan Peterson, and he advocates for taking responsibility in your life, and he does want to help the men. And what would be your tip? Yes, there's a crisis, but is there any hope for these other guys?
Yeah, don't get confused, right? Don't get confused about who you are. Now, I get it. I remember people like David Earp that I grew up with. He's dead now, right? He died of some complications from HIV or whatever. I don't know. He was always gay. I get it. And he was a good kid. Always liked David, right? That's why when people are like, no, people aren't born that way, I was like, David was. You know what I mean? And David was a good kid. I mean, and he wasn't bad at all. And I think he was widely accepted around our community because everybody liked him. You know what I mean? And so I truly believe he was born that way, and he should be accepted that way. God made him that way, and that's it. I mean, okay, well, that's David, and so whatever. But there's this other information war that's taking what are actually men or would be men, and because our brains are plastic, as you well know, right? They can be molded into the vessel that they're in, into the ecosystem, into the aquarium that they're in, right? And it's being, instead of using information war to say, hey, it's Mother's Day, go be with your mother. It's information war. Let's go smoke some dope. Now, why don't you go be with your mother? It's Mother's Day. If you don't call your mother today, basically you're not a man. You know what I mean? That's the kind of information war I want to see. I want to see the information war of go be with your family. I want to see information war that on Fridays and Saturdays has advertisements that like, hey, if you're watching this from a bar, you're worthless. You should be with your family. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? If you know what I'm saying? We want, if there's going to be an information campaign, it should be one that's like, you don't have to be a drug addict. You don't have to be an alcoholic. If you're a man and you want to, and you feel like a man, be a man. We need you as a man. We need you in special operations forces. We need you in the Marines. We need you flying F-16s, right? We need you flying. We need you going to MIT and Caltech and studying physics, right? We need you to do things that are important, studying mathematics. Not everybody's going to be monkey boy climbing up the mountains like I used to do in the Army and running around the Mount Everest and all. Not that I climbed Mount Everest, I just walked to the bottom a couple times. But I mean, but what I'm getting to is we need all types, but just embrace your nature. If you feel like you're going against your nature by wearing all this, you know, I've told Andy no several times. I spent a few days, Masako Ganaha and I spent several days with Andy in London. I was like, Andy, stop flying that flag on your Twitter. I like Andy. You know, and how's Andy though? He starts his interviews with, I'm Asian and I'm gay. And I'm like, get rid of that crap, man. Take a shower and stop. Like, hey, I don't go into an interview going, I'm Michael Yon and I like women. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of obvious, you know what I mean? But I mean, it's just like, why would you advertise that? You know what I mean? Because it's information war, right? And they're trying to divide us and they're trying to demasculate men so that they can take us out, right? Do your drugs, smoke your dope, go ahead and go to the bar, you know, do this, do that, but do anything but guard your border, right? Watch elections stolen right out from under your feet. And what do? Complain about it. You know what I mean? Seriously. You know what I mean? And you've got all these men, especially, I lived in Europe for more than 6 years. Ich spreche Deutsch. I speak German, right? Because I went to a language school, right? And let me tell you, having been around the world in about 90 countries for more than half of my life, there's two sorts of people that always have to bring up guns to me, English and Germans. And I always tell them, the reason we have guns is, you know, English and Germans, right? So, and and I'll actually write down, I'll take a sheet of paper if I'm sitting, you know, some Germans or English, because I'm traveling a lot. So I often meet English and Germans. You're from England. Hold on. Let me get a pen out. I'll write a note, put it in my pocket. And within 20, 30 minutes, whatever, they'll bring up guns. And I'll go, oh, here you go. You were going to bring up guns because you're programmed to do that. You're English or you're German, right? And I'll say, it shocks them sometimes. I'm like, wow. Yeah, wow. Because I know I've traveled the world a lot. This has happened to me endless times. And you know what? I don't want to talk statistics with you about guns because I don't care. You don't know what those statistics are, neither do I. And I'm not going to argue with slaves. You talk like a slave. You are a slave.
Mm.
You have no freedom of speech in Canada. You have no freedom of speech in New York. You have no freedom of speech in here in Los Angeles. You have no freedom of speech in Germany, where I lived for more than 4 years. You have no freedom of speech. You don't have freedom of speech in Canada. If you don't have freedom of speech and you want to lecture me, you're just a slave, right? And I'm not going to argue about my freedom, surrendering my freedom to a slave. You're a mouthpiece of your slave master. No, I'm sorry. The reason we have guns was my grandfather fought in the Revolutionary War in North Carolina. He was a colonel, right? He was fighting the British. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, you know, my family got shipwrecked. My mother's side got shipwrecked on Bermuda in 1609, coming to Jamestown. They got shipwrecked there in a ship called the Sea Venture. We know because there was a book written about it. Because the author was on the ship, he was there to do basically propaganda for the Virginia Company. He got shipwrecked with them for 10 months, and my family is actually talked about in the book. And bottom line is, they've been fighting the British since day one. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, getting away from that whole, you know, basically slavery thing, right? You know, people look at slavery as you have to be like Kunta Kinte with chains on you. That's nonsense.
Mm.
Look at Canada right now. Take the shot or you lose your job. Take the needle into your arm. If you took the needle because they forced you to, because you're going to lose your job or whatever, you're a slave. They forced you at the end of something to take the shot. You are a slave. You behaved as a slave and you took the shot. And now notice the people that tried to get us to take the shots, that they don't hump our legs anymore, right? And they just don't do it anymore because they're dying. They're dying everywhere. Something has happened to the birth rate. We don't even know what the numbers are. Nobody seems to know what the numbers are. But we all know, probably everybody watching this, definitely including me, either knows people that took the jabs and got very sick or died very quickly after. I certainly do, quite a few. Of course, then again, I know a lot of people because of my work, but it was quite a lot. I don't even know how many. I lost count. I mean, it was at least a couple of dozen that either died or got very sick, right? And what long-term effects does that have on people? And when you ask people, why did you take this? Several, like Jordan Peterson, good man, very intelligent. He took it for the same reason one of my special forces friends took it. He wanted to travel, right? So in other words, you weren't, or Elon Musk said he took it so he could travel to his plants in Germany. I don't know if he really took it, but I mean, but the bottom line is that was coercion, right?
Coercion.
Mice, mouse traps. When you're doing counterintelligence or you're doing, recruiting spies or whatever, use mice, right? The mouse trap. When you bait the cheese with the mouse trap, there's four major cheeses, right? Mice, money, ideology, coercion, and ego, right? Coercion.
Wow.
That was coercion, right? And the coercion didn't work with a lot of us. People are like, oh, how did you travel around the world, without getting the shots? I said, first of all, I'm not a slave. I'm not going to take your shots, period. I don't care about your numbers. I don't care about your statistics that you lied about and that you were wrong about and or lied about. Obviously lied. This was obviously a genocidal attack. Obviously, a lot of people they're playing their little board games and stuff. They don't get it. Knock knock. That's the big bad wolf. He's coming for you, for your life, right? The depopulation is fully underway, and repopulations, right? Like at the border, all these things that I do, warning about food supplies. We're clearly going into large scale global famines. The conditions are being set. It's just a slow process, but it's clearly coming. Just like I've said before on the border, they say the numbers are down. Nonsense. I'm down in Darien Gap in Panama and Mexico, and I have extensive networks that I've set up over the years. You can't go through the Darien Gap without me knowing about it, right? I get daily reports about the numbers coming through and this, that, and the other, right? Videos, reports, written reports, that sort of thing. The inputs are increasing. There's more people coming. Bottom line is slavery. Most people are living in little aquariums. The only information where you'll never see a really good one is the one you're in, like a cult. The only cult you'll never see is the cult that you're in, right? You can see everybody else's cult, ringing the bells at the airport or whatever. You see, oh, that guy's in a cult, poor guy. You know what I mean? But you don't see the cult that you're in, right? And other things I've learned traveling around the world, not all fish can coexist in the same aquarium. It's just not true. You put a bunch of, Kurds and Afghan or Kurds and Iraqi Arabs together, eventually they're going to fight. Turks and Kurds too, right? You know what I mean? I mean, it's just those cultural fish. I know they're not fish, but it's our cultures are like fish on the fish chart. When you get in an aquarium, you got the fish chart. This sort of fish is green, 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 green. That's like Filipinos. Filipinos can get along with almost everybody, and then they're amber with other Filipinos, right? But the Filipinos can, like, when I go around the world, I see Filipinos everywhere, and they're like, oh, happy, they get along with everybody. They know how to just like, get along, And then there's other ones like Chechens, red, 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 red. It's like, and then there's a lot of them that are like red, red, green, red, whatever. But what we're doing is we're mixing in sufficient numbers of people that they will have their own anthro-insulas. And the anthro-insula is a human island, right? Where you have such massive numbers, you'll have entire Somali cities, right? You'll have entire cities of Ethiopians or whatever, right? That are now balkanizing the United States. You see where this is going. This isn't rocket science, right? They're coming over the border by the millions, at least 300,000 per month, at least. That's I called up a very experienced Border Patrol friend yesterday. And I said, actually, what number would you use if you were going to, a highly defensible number about how many are coming into the United States every month to stay, like gotaways, unvetted, or they're just being allowed in because of the new regime. And interestingly, he said 300,000 as well. And so that's interesting because I just said that on the John Batchelor show. I said 300,000 is a highly defensible number based on I can definitely defend that corner, right? But realistically, it might be something more on the order of 400,000 or 500,000. We just don't know. Nobody knows. Department of Homeland Security doesn't know. And many of these will be clearly here to do operations, right? And we don't, and remember, it doesn't take many to take down the grid. If our grid goes down, it's probably a matter of time. I mean, if we have a large scale systemic grid disruption in the United States, you'll see millions of people die, millions, right? This city here, Los Angeles, will be gone. It'll be gone with the wind, right? It'll where are you going to get your food? Your water's not going to work, right? How about this guy? How about a doll boy in Tokyo? He lives in an apartment about twice the size of my hotel bathroom, right? And a huge significant part of that apartment is filled with toilet paper, but not food. You know what I mean? He literally will exist on the few bottles of water that he does have, and 2 or 3 meals maybe max. And he's got no fat on his body. He's got no muscle to eat off of. To autophagy off of. Right? He's got none of that. Right? And so um, we've got huge amounts of people like this. So back to the manhood crisis, or the whatever. What do you call it? Manhood crisis?
Masculinity crisis,
Masculine.
for
Yeah, let's
sure.
call it manhood crisis. Masculine. I'll call it manhood. Right? I mean, who am I? Who am I responsible? Who's responsible for my defense? I am. Right? I am responsible for my defense. I mean, the first thing, of course, if somebody starts breaking in my door, is I'm going to call 911 as fast as I can. But I know that when seconds count, they're minutes away at best. But if this electricity goes out, that's it. There's not going to be any 911. I mean, seriously, look what happened in the riots during the COVID lockdowns, right?
Mm.
During the slave lockdowns, those straight up
Mm.
slave lockdowns. Those were slavery
Wow.
lockdowns, teaching the slaves to take their orders, get the shot,
Mm.
take your jab. Like, look at all these talking heads and comedians and whatnot talking about take the jab, you fools. Don't do your own homework. What were they saying, Rachel? Like, don't do your own. They're actually saying the opposite. Like, what were you always taught? Read, do your homework, before you do something. Think about it, especially if it's life changing.
Mm.
But instead, they're actually saying, don't think for yourself. They were straight up saying things like, stop thinking for yourself. They were actually saying it out loud. And it works with a lot of people. And a lot of those people are now dead. And actually, I have no more liberal friends. I used to say I have liberal friends. I've gotten rid of them. And the reason, and I'm talking about people that I've known for years. I don't
Yes.
want them around. I don't want them knowing my inner workings and that sort of thing, where I'm going to be at, that sort of thing. I don't want them to even know it from being in my ecosystem of friends,
Yes.
because I know from my experience in years and wars and doing things downrange, is that the worst enemy you have is a coward in your camp, right?
Wow.
You don't want cowards in your camp, right?
Wow.
Because a coward in your camp is the worst thing you can have. You've got to cut ties with them and get rid of them. We are going into a war situation. We're going to go in this very serious food crisis situation, which leads to war, pandemic, famine, war. It's funny. A couple of years ago, I think I told you this one time, Rich. I was doing this interview, and I said, pandemic, famine, war, the triangle of death. If you get a big pandemic, you always get famine and war. If you get a big famine, you'll get war. And they just go together. If you get one, you get the other two. And there's reasons for that, actually. It's not just like, an isosceles triangle or something, or right. It's just like you'll get. And so I was on this interview, and this reader, a longtime reader, she said, "You always talk about pandemic, famine, war, as if you made it up." And I'm like, "Well, I did." And she goes, "No, you didn't. It's in the Bible." And I was like, "You're right. I forgot where I got it from." I mean, that's almost certainly where I got it from, and I just forgot that's where I got it from. And when I was a kid, we were being taught important things, and often I was rejecting them wrongly. And
Mhm.
and it's the four horsemen, right? And I said, "God, I plagiarized off the Bible." I mean, it's probably a special 11th commandment. Thou shalt not plagiarize off the Bible. You know what I mean? I was like, well, at least I mean, it was an accident, but I studied war so much over the years. I've spent so many years in wars and conflicts, and just read, you wouldn't believe, like rooms full of books on these sorts of things. Spent a lot of time with people with a lot of experience in wars. My whole friend set, basically, right? Whether it's intelligence or special operations people, or pilots or whatever. And so we collectively, we know a lot about war, and we compare notes. And I thought, well, I came up with this thing: pandemic, famine, and war. It's like right out of the Bible. 2,000 years old.
Mm,
I mean, if it was that, they knew it way back then enough that it was so important that they actually wrote it down, you know?
yes.
So anyway,
So, Michael, the information warfare is a direct attack on men and masculinity.
for sure, for sure. I mean, you know, confusing people, right? We have General Milley, totally woke, worthless. You know, I mean, he's worthless. And CQ Brown, who's, you know, future chairman of the Joint Chiefs. If he's not, if that didn't happen while I was asleep, because I do have to sleep, you know, once per day, preferably. But, but, but CQ Brown, because sleep is very important. If you're doing and stuff, you have to budget time for sleep, and it's an essential. You don't like burn the midnight oil all the time because you'll become ineffective, right? And so you have to get your good sleep. That's very important. And CQ Brown, F-16 pilot, a 4-star general in the Air Force, amazingly Black Lives Matter. He's a super ultra racist. I mean, he openly doesn't like white people. He doesn't even hide it. Look at his videos. Look on YouTube, CQ Brown. I blah blah blah, and you know, it talks about, you know, they always throw that in your face, like, what do you know? You're not black. And I'm like, what do you know? You're not white. You know what I'm saying? You think we just sit around plotting all the time to hurt you? Because let me tell you how much time I've spent doing that. Zero. Absolutely zero. In my whole life, I spent 0 seconds sitting around plotting on black people. None. You know what I mean? It just hasn't happened. You know what I
Wow.
mean? But you'll always get this. You just don't understand. And I'm like, let me tell you what. I spent more than half my life, again, I'm going to say it again, in more than 90 countries. And guess what? Not only do I not understand, I don't even care. I'm out with Chinese, I'm out with Japanese, I'm out with Koreans, I'm out with Filipinos, I'm out with Africans from Congo and Somalia, I'm out with Mexicans and Panamanians and Colombians. You think I'm just going to focus my life trying to understand every nuance of black people? I don't care. You know what I'm saying? I have a whole world I live in, and it's not white and black. That's stupidity to think that it is. It's information war. It's information war to weaponize. The Russians were doing this since at least the 1920s. Actually, the Japanese did it for a very short time because of, and they had cause to do it, trying to make whites and blacks fight each other in the United States. That was back in like the 1920s. But so we have CCP, we have actors in the United States doing it, and we do it too. It's not like the United States is some babe, victim, innocent person in the woods. We also go to other, you know, study anthropological nuance of different interactions and find the information campaigns that will work to cause, you know, the friend of the friend thing will be sided up with Montagnards or whatever against the Vietnamese, and you know, so long it goes on and on and on and on, right? You know,
Yes.
siding up with the Kurds, of course, which I like the Kurds, about with them quite a lot. But I mean, but the bottom line is we do it too. We're not just innocent babes. There we were playing golf and we got hit with, you know, with Pearl Harbor one day. You know, we were just playing golf and in church, and you know, we got hit by a bunch of Japs. No, that's not what happened. You know, I love Japan, by the way, and I've written 3 books that are only in Japanese to wake up the Japanese about information war. They're not even in English because I've spent years trying to wake up the Japanese with some success, and then of course Japan is in the same similar situation as the United States. It's under intense information war. Keep in mind, a lot of this information war is targeted at Japanese, like, hey, go drink your whiskey, marry a plastic doll. You know what I mean? You know, run around with tassels in your hair all the time, like you're 12 years old when you're really like 22. You know what I mean? You know, I've seen this at University of Florida at Gainesville, like 20 years ago. Like, you know, students dressed up like they're little children. You know what I mean? And at the time, I was like, how curious. You know, because keep in mind, I'd already lived overseas a lot at that point and spent years downrange, and I come back and I'm like, huh, I didn't think much of it. You know, when I was after I got out of the army, and I was going to school in California. I lived more than 2 years in California. I got offered a job to work for Michael Jackson, right? Doing security. So I did security for Michael Jackson at his Neverland Ranch when I was in school, right? So I would just basically do my calculus homework and learned a lot of math at Neverland. But now, in light of my years of study subsequent that on information war and seeing it around the world, And Michael Jackson, always felt sorry for him. I felt sorry for people say, "Well, you felt sorry for Michael Jackson." I'm like, he was like a prisoner. I mean, he couldn't leave without being hounded. You know what I mean? And I mean, and it's like he was. I see this with my updated knowledge again, studying information more for years, having written 3 books on it now. And Michael Jackson living in Neverland, right?
Mhm.
It was like, what's fake and what's real here, right? I mean, does he actually
Ooh.
believe he's? I believe he was both part of and a victim of information war as well, right? I mean, he was just in this little ecosystem. He was molded by it, and he just became basically this object, for people to, anyway,
Yes.
working at Neverland, I actually developed some empathy for the guy. Now, some people say, "What do you think about the child stuff?" I don't know. I don't know any. I wasn't hanging out with Michael Jackson. I mean, I never talked with him. I would just sit there and do my calculus homework and check his lions. He had a lion there. Check his 2 giraffes. Check his chimpanzee. He had a baby chimpanzee, and the poor chimpanzee, it was a baby, and it would be you had to check the temperature of the like little room once per hour to make sure the heater didn't go out. And I would go in there, and this baby chimpanzee, it would just be. I was like, why is this chimpanzee alone? It should be with a mother, you know what I mean? So I'd just hang out with it. I'd be like, hey, baby chimpanzee, and it would look at me with its eyes. I thought I had to turn on my flashlight. He could turn on my flashlight. He could push the button. And I could actually hit the button on the flashlight. It was like it would see it turn on. Thing was cute.
Yes.
I mean,
Wow.
it's just like, but it made me think too, like this chimpanzee, he's just in this cage away from his people. You
Mm.
know what I mean? He's not in the jungle. He's not being a chimpanzee. He's being this
Ooh.
thing. And Michael Jackson was like that. Most people are like that. I'm not, I don't know but a lot of people, they never feel the call of the wild. You know what I mean? Like me, I went cannibal hunting for fun. Found a lot of them too. It was epic. It was the funnest thing I ever did. That's the call of the wild. You know what I mean? I was like hunting down cannibals in the jungles and stuff alone. That's the call of the wild. You know what I mean? But I'm completely not in the aquarium. I'm completely out of it. So
Mhm.
I don't have a lot of relations that I'm worried about losing. If people say, "Well, you shouldn't smoke dope," yeah, 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 that's what I said. You know what I
Yes.
mean? I'm not
Yes.
in your aquarium. I'm not in your smoke filled aquarium. You know what I mean? I can see
Yes.
it from the outside and I see you're getting attacked and they're going to kill you and take your women. You know what I mean? And,
Mhm.
um, and a lot of these guys that are going to take your women are not necessarily actually women that, men that the women would want to actually necessarily be with. Right. But I mean, the Mongol hordes type thing are coming in,
Yes.
but
Wow.
that's how
Mm.
these things unfold. That is how they unfold, right?
Yes. Well, to end on something hopeful, what would you say to the men? Is there anything hopeful for the masculinity crisis?
Yeah. If you're smoking dope, stop. If
Mm.
you're out at the bar all the time, stop. Right? Go out and do something active. Get out in the sunshine. Right? You know, um, on PTSD thing, I did a lot of combat, and I have no PTSD. Right? I mean, I did a tremendous amount of real combat. I don't mean just going to the wars. Most war correspondents don't do much actual combat if they do any at all. And I'm the only war correspondent that I know with any significant experience that's not an alcoholic or a drug addict. I am the only one, right? What would I do during breaks in the war, right? Walk up to Mount Everest, just to the bottom, or go walk around in the mountains for weeks, get sunshine, walk in the sun. Look at me, I'm always out on the borders and stuff. I'm always in the jungles with the Indians and things like that. I feel perfectly healthy. If I get my sleep and I get some good food and my drug, coffee, if I get my drug, coffee, and that's it. I'm good to go. I'm happy. I'm even watching the. I don't know. I've even talked about this with some of the special operations friends I have, like, and they'll say the same thing. They're like bizarrely happy, even though their whole life revolves around like stopping an avalanche from crushing our people. Because I don't know, because I don't wake up with a hangover. I don't wake up going, I got to score some dope today. You know what I mean? It's not part of my schedule. It doesn't cross my mind. But what I'm getting to is the chemical warfare. It is chemical warfare. Taking the jab was chemical warfare, biological warfare. These things kind of biological and chemical warfare kind of there's some point where they're brackish water, like they're
Yes.
kind of the same thing. And but what I'm getting to is we are under intense information and chemical warfare attack from various fronts, doing drugs, pumping the alcohol, whether that's the United States or across Europe, or do the drugs as much as you want. When I go up to Portland and I went up to this, they hand out needles. The government hands out needles. They literally, I went up to this van. It's in this church parking lot, right? And I said, "Hey, I need some needles." And they looked at me and they're like, they can tell I don't really need them. I'm like, "Well, I need them." And they're like, "Okay." And I said, "I just need two." And they gave me two big boxes. When I said two, I thought, I was like, I just wanted them to photograph, right? I didn't tell them that, but they gave me two boxes of needles. They gave me, I have to look at my photos. They gave me, the rubber bands that you put around your arm when you're going to shoot drugs, bunch of those. They gave me these little heat things that you heat your drugs in. I don't know how to do the drugs. And I think some cotton balls and some other things they gave me, and just like, it was all free, quote unquote. They're just handing this stuff out, facilitating, here, do all the drugs you want. I was just down on Skid Row the other day. I've been there quite a few times over the years, and a couple times in the last few days, actually. I mean, it's horrific. It's like zombie land, right? And just spread that out to look at Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden, complete traitor, sold out his country, just a Mr. Drug addict. I wonder how much drugs that he took that were actually supplied to him by some foreign actor. I have no idea. I mean,
Mm.
that's supposition. That's definite supposition. I do not know that to be true, and I have no evidence that it's true, other than the evidence that seems to be pretty compelling, that he's a drug addict who has worked for foreign actors. Right?
Ooh.
We already know that. I mean, the United States does it too, pumping alcohol, pumping drugs into your opposition to weaken their defenses, or to, what better person in the world than have a drug addict son of the president? You don't want the president to be a drug addict, because that would be a little bit over the top. Well, we've got one that's that thing, Biden. He's, the fake president. But I mean, but the son who has complete access to a corrupt father, the son drug addict who's, have you seen some of the photos that they're putting on the internet with him and the little children? They see him on Twitter. You're like, what is going on here? If he was any other man in America, he would probably be arrested immediately for some of the things that they're putting on Twitter, like these little girls that look like 10 years old dressed like prostitutes. It's on Twitter. It's unbelievable. Have you seen some of the stuff that came off of his laptop? And yet people are just like, so off in game land and smoking dope land and whatever. They're like, okay, whatever. You know what I mean? You think our
Yeah.
grandfathers would have put up with that?
We need strong men to defend the country and our families.
Yeah. Yep. We do. We do. We do. And you know what? Don't put up with weak men. Get them out of your networks. They will be nothing but trouble. I mean, there's nothing that'll get you killed faster than being around cowards. It's better to
Oh,
be alone. It is absolutely. You ever watch Lost in Space, Dr. Smith? Dr. Smith. You remember Dr.
no.
Smith from Lost in What? You need to watch Lost in Space. Look on YouTube and say best of Dr. Smith. He's always like, cowardly, and he's always doing these backbiting things, and duplicitous, and just
Mm.
always selling the whole spaceship out and that sort of thing. That's
Oh,
an act. That's an actual personality type. That's not just a show. You know what I mean? It's an actual playing out an actual personality type. You got to stay away from people like that, right?
mhm.
Put them on their own. You know what I mean? Because they're going to be. That's like tying an anchor around your neck. When you're trying to swim. It's just not going to work
Wow.
out well.
Wow. I love your insights. So helpful for the men. And thank you so much, Michael Yan.